Hi, my name is Ben, and I'm a full-time game designer for a studio in the northeast of the UK called Radical Forge. I've also previously worked on some of the DLC for Zombie Army 4. But here we are, start of a new week. A new opportunity to really make an impact. Maybe I can fix the one thing which has been bugging me about my game. The action. I've recently been describing my game as an action-driving game based around the unique mechanic of only firing while drifting. This feels half correct. It does have the unique mechanic of the drift cannon. That being said, I don't think the action is really there yet. In fact, I think being able to attack is the bare minimum that you can do for an action game. We need more interaction. I like action games. The reason as to why I think the genre is successful isn't due to their sometimes violent nature, but their level of engagement. Action games are non-stop engagement. After all, everybody wants to feel like they're making an impact. This is true for many aspects of life. But in games, the impact is more literal. But there's only so much of the same action that you can perform before you get bored. The drift cannon is nice, but we need more. Just like in the real world, people and players need diversity. We need variety before we go insane. What do we have so far in terms of player-based action mechanics? We have drifting, including the drift cannon, and we have avoiding enemy vehicles. That's pretty much it. What can we do to build upon this? One thing that Car Game 1 had, and this one is still missing, is a speed boost. The speed boost felt great, but if it felt great, why didn't I just include it straight away? I believe it's due to how confined my test level was. There wasn't enough room to even think about adding a boost. The levels were too small. After all, what's the one thing that people like to do in cars other than drifting while firing a minigun? It's driving fast. Let's add the speed boost. I started out by ensuring that the game registers the button being held down and releasing. I then took the acceleration script and multiplied the value by 1.5, thinking it would only be a little bit faster. That didn't work at all. I adjusted the value again to get something a bit more realistic, and that's actually the whole base functionality for the speed boost, but it's a little boring in its current state. It works functionality wise in terms of getting the player to go faster, but it feels bad. So I need to add a little bit of game feel to it. Some first easy things that I could do to do this was pulling back the camera, triggering a screen shake, and adding some boost lines on the wheels. This is making it feel really nice, and it's already a great start. After thinking about this for a while though and testing it in the engine, I noticed that I seem to really like how the boost lines seem to blend into the drift lines as you're drifting, and thought I should enable that all the time. So I leaned into this. I simply enabled those drifting lines all the time while you're boosting. It felt great. It really tied the whole thing together. That being said, it currently is able to be used forever, and this isn't very good long term. It will remove some of the fun by having it used too often. Remember, we want to pace our mechanics to encourage using them to be fun. So the last boost related mechanic that I want to add is adding some sort of fuel, which judging by my variable names is called boost juice. I want this to drain as the player is boosting, and I also want it to refill because there's no point in having a one-off boost. I want to do this just so the boost isn't used all the time. I'm torn between having it auto refill and having it refill based on a pickup. Both of these are quite easy to implement, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the auto refill for now, just to get a feel for it and see how it feels. To make this, I just added a line of code which adds to the amount of boost juice if the player isn't boosting. I also made some UI as an indicator so we can really get a feel for this thing. It took a couple iterations to get the UI feeling right. I started out by having a bar at the side of the screen, but it felt a little in the way, it felt a little disjointed. I tried to integrate it better with the player vehicle, so what I did is I made a ring around the vehicle and using that as the boost indicator. I also did this for the health since I happened to be in the area. Once the boost juice has been fully drained, then it will actually be disabled until it refills to the top again. This is to stop the player from using it all the time and actually try and manage their resources. If the player manages to let go of their boost before it reaches the bottom, you'll still be able to see it auto refill, but the player will still be able to use it before it actually reaches its maximum threshold. All I've got here is great, but I don't want to get too carried away in presentation at the moment, as that is something that will come in later on when I actually get to polishing these mechanics. At the moment, we just want them to work, which what we've got is a brilliant start. Let's make the next form of interaction. Explosive barrels. Explosive barrels will be a nice threat to the player, but the player can also use this as a tool to their advantage to try and take out enemies. This was something which also happened to be quite easy to implement. I added a barrel mesh, which I happen to have from an asset pack that I've been using, and I enabled physics. Then what we need to do after this point is ensure that it's actually registered by the player. So what I've implemented at the moment is that when the player gets close to it, it'll do a white flash. This is just a simple bit of game feel which I like adding to mechanics to really communicate that an action has been performed. After this, I just have to launch it and then put a delay for detonation. For the detonation, I simply added a screen shake, particle effect, burn mark and a sound. I might adjust the time that it takes for the barrel to detonate, but as a mechanic as a whole, I'm actually quite happy with where this is. With these two new forms of interaction present in the game, I think I need to take a long hard look at the game's design to really understand what it is. I need to ensure that the levels are going to be fun, and I also need to make sure that they line up with the game's pillars, something which I don't think is fully designed yet. I'll be figuring this out over the course of the next week and start to experiment with what gameplay will really be like. So subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.